and welcome to day one of Domains 101. I'm Jim Groom, and I'm surrounded by some amazing folks here at Reclaim who will introduce themselves, and you'll be hearing a lot from. But I think we wanted to talk a little bit to get this thing started is welcome everyone, and we'll be hearing more from you shortly. But wanted to give you all kind of a little bit of a sense of the virtual setup and how that's working, just so you're all familiar and so there's no questions out the gate. So it'd be interesting if we could take a look at the site that everybody's looking at right now. So I don't know if
I can do it. Yeah.
Yeah, you can bring that on. See, as you can see, I can actually reach out and say, high five, thanks for getting that.
Oh, no.
But as you
I
can
don't
see,
know how
here
to
it
feel
is.
about this.
A little bit Inception.
Mm-hmm.
There's a toggle. If you see it here, it's a toggle live space. And if you toggle off live, it will just go to like almost like a placeholder video.
We're gonna have an infinite mirrors effect or infinite
That's
hall of
fine.
mirrors effect here.
So
That's
you can
fine.
toggle that. But if you ever find yourself not in a live video, toggle that video to off and then live. Or worst comes to worst, refresh the page and whatever is playing live will show up. So that's kind of the troubleshooting you would need to do. If you have any other issues beyond that, just reach out in
Discord help.
Yeah,
Discord.
refreshing the page should be good.
And we will be fine. But usually toggling or refreshing the page will bring you where you need to be.
As with anything, right?
Yeah.
Did you try restarting your...
When in doubt, refresh. But I'm super excited to be here, not only in the space physically with you all, which I think we'll have a couple camera angles that we can show throughout the workshop, but then also to have a hybrid virtual model. We've got Pilot joining virtually and, obviously everyone joining, participating in the workshop virtually. So this is a really cool opportunity, I think, for us to slow down and talk a bit about how we're doing this, why we want to do it this way, before even jumping into domains.
I like your thinking. So what are you going to say about this physical space?
You brought it up, Lauren.
Well, I think to start, I'll say that we started maybe 2 minutes late because right beforehand, Taylor spilled his very physical coffee on the table.
I almost never spill coffee on expensive equipment. Just right before.
Just about 40 seconds before live,
I have things to tell the St. Norbert folks.
So if our sound smells like coffee, you'll know why.
Yeah.
Got into the sound, the audio.
Got on the mic,
I will also say I'll be watching Discord, as new folks are joining to make sure that you have access to the domains channel, event channel on Discord, but know that you can always go to workshop.reclaim.tech as sort of your home page or home base for the workshop.
Good call.
And then Discord, of course, is the space where we're chatting virtually in between. You'll also have the opportunity to join into voice channels if you want to hang out or anything, during breaks. This is really, the Discord is meant to be a community space, not only during this event, but beyond that too. So you'll see other members in the community that have joined Discord, and feel free to engage with them in other channels beyond the domains event channel for the next 2 days. Did you all want to start maybe to talk about where we are?
I would love to. I think I might default to the great Taylor Jaden, given a lot of what we're in is a result of his work over the years here at St. Norbert and beyond. So
sure, yeah.
Taylor,
so
what say you?
So we're on St. Norbert College's campus in De Pere, Wisconsin, and we are in a sort of experimental proof of concept studio space.
Peer-to-peer Wisconsin?
No.
It's just De Pere. Just peer-to-peer?
Yeah. Just it's peer-to-peer tube Wisconsin.
That's my localized jokes. You can get all of my humor and more. I'm putting out a CD with all of it. You just stay tuned. That will be at the break.
So this is a sort of proof of concept studio. It's in like a 120-year-old classroom. So there's some things that are less than ideal about it, but it's kind of a flexible space that the folks at St. Norbert are graciously letting us use, which is really cool. They even redecorated. So behind me over here is like a screencasting station that faculty and students will use to, make screen recordings and things like that. And there's a little shelf here. Actually, before I even get into that, I just want to do a quick shot of the room so people can kind of see what this is.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
So I'm gonna.
That's
Oh yeah, so Taylor.
We have many cameras. Oh, look at this is the wireless camera.
oh boy.
You're really getting the full.
Mostly wireless. So this is the table we're at. There's like a little couch and green screen area.
It's pretty cool.
Light board. They probably can't hear me that well.
They can hear you okay. You're bouncing off the walls. The mic's not great, but it's working fine.
And they happen to redecorate over there for us. So
Oh
it was
yeah,
really cool.
look at this.
So
This is
they
fantastic.
grabbed our website header and
Yeah, what-
VHS.
If you can
So-
get a little closer, Taylor.
It's amazing.
Yes.
It's beautiful.
This is the best diorama I've ever seen. And I already love the room because, I mean, we'll talk a little bit about how the mics are set up and our dynamic here around this big table. But I think, Annika did that amazing diorama of Brian Mather's header for our site, which
Totally.
is amazing. But the space itself that Taylor and the folks at SNC put together is beautiful because it is in many ways an homage a practice of doing the DIY video recording space where people come together and build and you feel like it. It's not that predefined, crest-drawn $1 million room that no one can use. It really is a room you walk into, you feel comfortable, you put the headphones on, you feel connected with the people you're in the room with, and even so much so with Pilot, who's remote, or all of you. So it's like, it's been a really nice transition to doing our remote virtual space with our group together, but also playing with the hybrid notion with Pilot not here, and then also trying to, wrap that all in Discord with these videos. And so I'm pretty excited about the experimentation with these virtual spaces. Obviously has some interest in that to some degree, given the work we do.
And
it's been fun. Yeah.
And I will also say too, I think just as we'll get into the tech overview, but I think it's also equally important that we sit with the strategy, how we're running these events or how we're talking about these, different digital tools. And so I'm really excited, I think, for the blend over the next 2 days to have both of those conversations. Today, Domains 101 will really be an introduction into domains. We want everybody to feel like we're all on the same page starting off. And then, that will take us into the more advanced stuff into tomorrow with Domains 201.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for that, just as much as I am excited to talk about the strategy and the meta part of this too.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's a lot. And I know Ed Beck is feeling a little bit, how would we say? Left out because he's not in this space. But Ed, we're bringing the space to you. That's the truth. That's what you have to, you have to suspend a certain amount of disbelief. And
I'm jealous too, Ed. It's okay.
So that's awesome.
So, I will say this is an introductory event, and I don't think we started by introducing ourselves.
We did not at all.
We should probably maybe do that.
I did put a tab in that. I put a sticker in that we could return to it.
Okay.
So this is a perfect time for us to return to that.
So for folks joining for the first time, my name is Lauren Hanks, Director of Operations at Reclaim. I've been with Reclaim for about 7 years now, and Domain of One's Own holds a special place in my heart. I first experienced domains as a student at the University of Mary Washington, and that was my first time seeing cPanel, installing WordPress for the first time, and just I remember the light bulb going off when I was able to look in File Manager and see how these WordPress files were playing, the plugins folder. It was just a really cool experience. And so that's kind of how I started. And I'm really excited to be here and looking forward to connecting with everyone virtually.
Yeah.
I'm Taylor Jaden. I've been at Reclaim since about November, and I'm our community instructional technologist. And so I really like tinkering with Domain of One's Own and Reclaim Cloud and kind of how we can make these things more useful for a bunch of different types of people, other folks that work with these tools already, folks who don't know about them, students, faculty, staff. That's the kind of stuff I like doing, is thinking through those use cases and how to make them usable and digestible. And doing new cool things with them. Before I was at Reclaim, I worked actually at St. Norbert College, which is where we are today on campus there, and I was our domains admin at the time. So that's my experience with Domain of One's Own, was administering it before I worked at Reclaim, was administering it for several years. Yeah, so I'm really excited to. This is the first time I've seen Jim and Lauren in person since, I think, a workshop I did in 2018.
Yeah, it's been a while.
One of our first.
So this is kind of cool we mentioned, as for us as a team as well. It's been really exciting kind of getting to get comfortable in this space with all the cameras and stuff, but also getting comfortable with each other, right? And running a workshop. So
Agreed.
Yeah.
Pilot, what say you?
Sure. I'm Pilot. I am a hosting account manager with Reclaim, which means that I send a lot of emails day to day. You may or may not have received some from me. I think at this point I've been with Reclaim with Reclaim since September, so more than half a year. So you probably have, but if not, you put it in the chat and I'll just send you some emails so you can feel included. In addition to sending emails, I also work as part of the EdTech team developing events like this and just sort of seeing what people find useful and how we can help them get it. That's really most of it, honestly. I like talking to people. Email works.
Yeah, email.
Yeah.
That's it.
would you say you're passionate about email?
Yes. No, email is one of my great passions, so much so that I set up an autoresponder for this week, just to make sure
More
that
than I
people knew
did,
I wasn't purposefully ignoring them.
Well, it's interesting. That's both Taylor and Pilot who came previously from Domain of One's Own
That's
schools. So you could be next out there.
That's true.
I'm Jim Groom. I am, along with Tim Owens, and essentially Lauren, we got the Reclaim hosting off the ground, and Domain of One's Own is how we started, is providing a service for faculty, students, and staff to build their digital presence in what might be referred to as a cyber infrastructure by Gardner Campbell. And I think there's a lot of power in that. It's something I still very much believe in 9 years later as a way forward. And I am thrilled that you all are here to dive into that infrastructure that makes it possible for your communities and beyond. So I think what we wanted to do at this point was, get some introductions from all of you, where you are, what you're doing, and we can kind of call that out. Is that
Yeah,
correct, Lauren? Am I
Totally.
am I on script still, or have I
think
already
so.
left a reservation?
No, this is good, and it's nice to know who you are, because I hadn't heard any of that before. No, just totally kidding. But I think some folks have already introduced themselves in the introductions channel, which is awesome. Yeah, and a cool thing about Discord, I will say, and I sort of mentioned this earlier, but for folks that are still kind of trickling in, the Domains 101-201 event is for the participants of this workshop that we're doing right now and tomorrow. So that is for this particular event. But of course, there are a lot of channels in Discord where you can connect with other community members. So introductions, you are introducing yourself to the larger Discord community, which is awesome. We want you to feel like you can use this space even outside of this event. But in the events channel, feel free to introduce yourself again, or, more in the context of Domain of One's Own. What is your role? Why are you here? What are you hoping to get out of the next 2 days? I think, the more of that information we know up front, we can help frame conversations with your goals in mind. So, if you are coming to the table with a set of challenges that you're facing on campus, we want to know about that. If you have questions or, things that you want to get out of the next 2 days, if you have specific goals, let us know, because you're likely not the only one. And then, of course, if you're just here to learn and be a part of the community and take it all in, that's also great too. That's what I'm most excited for, is sort of those unplanned conversations that will definitely come out of the first 2 days. So I'm looking here in the chat. It seems like some folks are typing. So we'll give you a few minutes.
Several people are typing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I've never seen several people
Um,
are typing message in Discord.
So it will, we'll give you a few minutes to write in, and wait there. Let's see. We've
Mhm.
got Dave joining from University of Virginia. Welcome, Dave.
Absolutely. Yep. I also saw Carla
Mhm.
from UVA as well.
Welcome, Carla.
Doug from Hamilton.
Yes.
Hey, Doug.
Doug Higgins,
Mhm.
Jojo from NYU Libraries. Fantastic.
who I think is a CUNY GC graduate, which is where I came from. That's where I first started as an instructional technologist,
Mhm.
which I love to see the CUNY mafia always.
Totally.
Jackie
got-
from Virginia Tech.
Hey, Jackie. Thanks for
Yes.
joining. We've got
Mhm.
M from Carleton.
Hi, Em.
Hey, everyone. This is so great. Let's see.
We have a couple from SUNY. We have Ed
Mhm.
Beck, who is already griping, so we got to watch him. But then also Amanda Schmidt
Mhm.
is here from Geneseo.
Hey, Matt from Davidson, from the digital learning team.
We've had a couple from SNC as well. Annika and Nick I've seen in the chat.
You know, I'm particularly interested to hear about, teams on campus that are working with student learners to kind of
Mhm.
help support these projects. I know Muhlenberg does a great job with that. UMW has sort of a digital knowledge center. I'm always, we were just looking at the SNC Tech Bar in the
Mhm.
other room where you have student workers that are kind of helping. So I always think that that's pretty cool. Hi, Annika. Thanks for joining virtually. We just said hey in person a few minutes ago. This is awesome.
Tierney. Hi, Tierney. Good to hear from you. And this is just fun. I love seeing all of these names just popping up. I keep saying magic. None of you have heard me say this, but all day yesterday I was saying, "Oh, this is so magical." I'm sticking by it. I think I'm right.
Totally.
It is
The other thing,
Mhm.
while everybody's sort of introducing themselves, we could maybe talk about here for a few minutes is just where Domain of One's Own sits in the larger idea of the Reclaim hosting or Reclaim EdTech community, because I think, we'll be dedicating the next 2 days to talking about Domain of One's Own, but it will likely trickle into other conversations for WordPress multi-site or Reclaim Cloud or other digital platforms that folks are using in partnership with domains. And so I think it's important that we contextualize Domain of One's Own in the space of something bigger. So not sure if you all have any thoughts on that.
Well, it's interesting because starting the conversation and again, seeing all the people roll in like Mo, Tierney, Heather from the Bronx. I'm a New Yorker myself, so I always loved Fordham. Actually, quick story, and I will get to your point, Lauren. The Father O'Hare at Fordham, who was the president there for at least a couple of decades, was my neighbor's uncle. And so I was grew up like always wanting to go to Fordham. Never did get in, but that's anyway, more than you ever wanted to know about, the various offerings at Reclaim. It's interesting because Domain of One's Own has been the way in which I mentioned earlier. We provided hosting for schools who saw value of it, and we really did it through single sign-on and the holy trinity of applications, which we'll talk about in depth here shortly. But one of the things that emerged out of that is people coming to us and saying, that's great, but I also need a WordPress multi-site for, scaling this so that for those folks who don't need cPanel. And something we'll talk about in some depth tomorrow is another element that we've been kind of building out is, what happens when you have a site that needs to be always online. It needs to scale resources immediately. It needs to pay only for what you use. We kind of, this whole idea of Reclaim Cloud emerged. And so they almost sit between the Domain of One's Own in some interesting ways. And it's interesting just to see us as a group sharing and changing our skill set to deal with the demands that come across the university now for a wide variety of things. And domain of one's own, like you said, it's very near and dear because it was the whole idea of taking some control over these spaces. But there's no one way to do domain of one's own at any given school. And it's one of the things I love about it, right? It's
Yeah.
not cookie cutter. It's not like, oh, this is domain of one's own and you have to use it this way. I mean, we have 20 people here and I'm sure there's almost 15 to 20 different ways they're imagining it, even if there are a lot of overlap in some of the ways they're using it.
Yeah, be it like how it's positioned in a school, you know, in terms of who it's available to, or even just who manages it. Like that actually has a lot of effect on how it gets used, right? Because just having a tool, as I'm sure everyone here knows, like just because something exists on a campus doesn't mean anyone knows about it. And so like, how does it get promoted? How does it get supported? Who are you talking to? Are you able to go into classrooms and have classrooms use domain of one's own, or is it more small individual projects? How do people confront it? You know, for the first time when a freshman on campus, what is the first time they're going to hear about domain of one's own likely at your school? That greatly affects how it's used.
Yeah. Or even if a school sees it as something that students use, or maybe just graduate students, or some people focus it just on faculty, right? So like there will be a varying degree. It's interesting just from the comment we see right there on the screen is a big theme that's emerged at several schools. SNC is one here on the ground that they can speak to, is bringing in student workers who are getting kind of exposed and excited about some of the possibilities. I mean, you even noted that, you know, Annika worked with you as a student aide, and we'll talk about that, but now is excited about being in ed tech.
Mhm.
I just think that's awesome.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like you're bringing in the next generation of cool ed techs from the ground up, and they see the possibilities. I just love it.
Mhm.
If you install it, they will come.
And
Amazing.
yeah, so I've been bringing in some of the comments from folks just because I think it's great to have on the screen and feature, you know, the different ideas and perspectives and experiences coming in for the next 2 days. And Jim, I loved what you said just about how domain of one's own is fitting into, you know, somewhere in the middle of these other services too. And I like to think of it as, you know, WordPress multi-site is a really great entry point for a lot of users, a lot of beginner students, for instance, who are just needing a quick WordPress site to get up and running. And that has a very valid, helpful space and can work super well with something like domain of one's own, where you need more room to explore and play around. Maybe, you know, the plugins in a multi-site, you want to think beyond those, you know, and so domains we're seeing a lot of schools that will have both and they run in partnership with each other. And then now to have this sort of third, more niche tier called Reclaim Cloud, you know, to think beyond even cPanel is really cool. So I like exploring that model of delivery in general. And I'm excited, you know, as we are jumping into the next 2 days to think about or to hear from you all how you're thinking about these tools and how they might be helpful on campus.
And it's a really good point you make, Lauren, is the idea that Reclaim Ed Tech, which now these workshops are in some ways kind of brought within, is providing a kind of more kind of thoughtful, hopefully, I wouldn't say instruction, but maybe that's overselling it, in that like we're trying to get people into and understand various possibilities. Like Tom Woodward next month will be dealing with gravity forms and looking at them and all the things you can do with them to basically create applications within WordPress. And then in July, Taylor and I will be taking on containers and thinking through Docker. And I think all of that is of a piece as we're imagining Reclaim Ed Tech more generally is there a space for educational technologists to get some of this professional development on the fly with like-minded ed techs who are trying or up against similar, maybe not like-minded, but still share similar structures and, you know, issues that they have to work through. And I'm pretty excited about that, actually.
And just looking from the comments too, Audrey Park from Emerson mentioned that they use multi-site for classes and single sites for folks wanting more flexibility. And then Amanda also said that they're interested in learning more about legacy methods too. I think that that's very common. We're seeing a lot of schools come to us saying, hey, I have this multi-site from 10
Yeah.
plus years ago. What do we do with it?
My favorite though are when schools come to us and they're like, we have a tilde space we want to get rid of. And then they're talking to the wrong person because I'm like, what? You can't get rid of it. Like you have
Don't
to
do it.
preserve that. And then but there is amazing some of the stuff you see. And, open education obviously often gets associated directly with OER and for some good reason. But I think there's a long history of websites and straight up HTML that ed techs in the 90s were showing faculty how to share resources. And I think that's part of our story that maybe should be preserved. I know Matt Gold had done a bunch of those in the 90s for me and other folks at the Graduate Center. And I did some of that at Mary Washington. And there is this idea of nothing is more portable than an HTML site from the 90s. I mean, it's one of the most beautiful things about that ed tech. And I like thinking this in a broader, maybe long historical space. And we're seeing the emergence of, the next generation of digital learning environments, which are often not on a LAMP environment like Domain of One's Own. And that's something we have to kind of work with our community to get ready for.
Totally. And to that point, switching gears into the next 2 days, which will be focused primarily on Domain of One's Own. We're going to kick it off here in a couple of minutes with a system refresh and overview of Domain of One's Own. So again, we're going back to the basics. This will likely be a refresher for a lot of the folks joining, but it's important to be in this time and make sure we have good, a conceptual understanding of that tech before we jump into some of the more strategic or support-based conversations around Domain of One's Own. So with that in mind, I want to kick off a question before we start our next session. What is Domain of One's Own? Sounds simple, but the answer is going to be different for each admin, for each user. It's going to look different. And I think would probably be a cool exercise to hear what Domain of One's Own is to you all. Maybe in the chat, think of a 2 to 3 sentence answer, your elevator pitch. We're going to do the same in the next session that we jump to in about 2 minutes. But I think sitting in the space, it's good practice to actually break down, okay, what is this?
Yeah, exactly.
Not tech, but what is it?
What does this mean for anyone?
Yeah,
I think
I would
give us
encourage people
insight
to get philosophical. I think.
I always like encouraging people to get philosophical.
Well, but I also think, one of the great things about that is I think there's no one pitch, right? Just like there's no one way people use it. I'm always interested in it maybe being a hammer that just, hits a certain nail, or it being a, digital tool case of philosophical possibility. But I like that. One of the things I've loved most about Domain of One's Own is that it is what you imagine it to be by extension of much of the other philosophy that drives the work you do. And I think that's why it fits for many of the coolest ed techs I might add. Big fan.
Cool.
My favorite metaphor for cPanel is a toolbox. Just because you brought up the hammer analogy, just thinking about.
People have called it, like John Udell has referred to it as a user innovation toolkit, where you can see what people bring to, and I think that's how one of those tools known as Swiper got invented. Remember that thing where you go around your house and you clean it up with just a swiper thing? It's a very simple thing. You put a pad on. That was invented.
Swiffer?
Swiffer.
I was like, are you describing a vacuum?
No, no swiping Swiper. But
Swiffer.
I do think that Swiffer was created as part of the folks who used their tool, Johnson & Johnson, whoever makes it, came back and said, this is what we came up with. Almost like the Lego ideas idea. This is what we built. And Domain of One's Own is at its greatest if someone who uses it comes back to you and says, this is what we built on the platform you gave us. And it's better than what you have, right?
I'm going to have a sign to be like, Jim, 30 seconds.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Anyway,
Let's let people
A couple minute break.
catch their breath.
and then we will jump into the next session in a few minutes. See you there.